going to be showcasing my Astral Power Pro Bar tonight. I think it turned out pretty awesome. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but who cares? Anyway, let's jump right into it. What does this do? It does two things. One, you don't have to make it. Two, it's going to be better than what LVY has to offer. It just has more features and functionality, basically. Now, what does this look like? Well, it looks like total crap. No, it doesn't. It looks pretty clean. So, what it has is multiple trackers for your dots, your empowerments, cooldown trackers, and of course a couple bars to make it all come together. It's a little focal point for you. It's really clean. Here's what it looks like when it's out of combat. So, clean, right? We like clean. So what does this actually feature? Well, you have a cooldown tracker for tier 15 talents. This tracks Force of Nature and Warrior of Elune. Those are your two active talents there. This Astral Communion thing, well, that was supposed to be tier 90, and since there's only one tier 90 talent that's active, well, it's Astral Communion. Yay. So you have these 3 moons right here. That's going to be Lunar Empowerment. On the right, you have the suns. That will be Solar Empowerment. On the bottom left, you have Full Moon. It's not functional yet because, well, Full Moon's pretty complex. So I'll save that for pre-patch. On the right, we have Celestial Alignment, which will also be Incarnation because those are merged spells in Legion. On this icon, we have Moonfire. The middle one, we have Stellar Flare. And the orange one on the right is going to be Sunfire. If you already knew that, good for you. Do you want a cookie? I don't have cookies, sorry. Anyway, this small, skinny teal bar right here is going to be Starfall. It's not based on the debuff, it's based on the player buff instead. It's just more reliable and, quite frankly, it works without a target, which Starfall does. Anyway, big bar. That's probably Astral Power. And if you guessed that, well, that's pretty easy, right? The single digit 0 right here, that's going to be your Astral Power. Now this really big fiery thing right in the middle above it, that's going to be Fury of Elune. And I'll talk about Fury of Elune tracker in just a minute. I'm just going to show some more features of this real quick. So the first one, and probably the most important one, is something that we probably all know from Balanced Power Tracker, which is the Eclipse Prediction. I've modified that to be Astral Power Prediction. So it predicts your Astral Power. I'm just going to auto-attack it so you can see it move. You can see the bar move right here, and this shiny thing right here is actually 40, 60, and 80, and that's just to show your next Astral Power consumer. So you'll see when you're dropping below 80 that you have this one, then 60, now it's going to have a 40 right here, and it'll stay there because there's nothing lower than 40, because Star Surge costs 40. And it goes up to 80 because, well, you can have 2 charges of Star Surge effectively. So, what about that prediction I just said? Well, it's kind of hard to emulate it, so the best way to do that was to use multiple bars, which is why there looks like there's so many. So, what happens if I press something like Lunar Strike? And for this testing purpose, I set it to Starfire. It works, right? So let's see if I can just drop combat for a second, or I can keep auto-attacking. That works too. Astral Communion, get this thing over with. Okay, come on. Why are you still bouncing? No more bouncing, please. Just get to 0. Stay at 0. Thank you. Okay, prediction. So, in Legion, Lunar Strike is supposed to generate 10. Baseline. Okay. So, if I have 0 right now, I should have 10 here. So, start casting Starfire. Look, 10. Sweet. Oh, but the bar moves, right? Doesn't matter. You see this little bar right here? Still moving. This bar will continue to fill up until it reaches 100. Obviously, you can't go over 100% because, well, you can't go over 100%. So that bar is there. It does work, and it does work for, Solar Wrath. It works for Solar Wrath too. That generates 6. But what about decimals? Because, you know, Blessing of the Ancients Elune makes a funny number on it. So I actually made this for testing purposes. Moonconform is my Blessing of Elune. Sort of. It's not lore-wise, not accurate, but who cares? It's testing purposes. Plus, there's no duration on it. Anyway, 0. We had 6 to begin with for Solar Wrath, and 1.4, which is what Solar Wrath does, times 6 is going to be 8.4. So this does handle decimal points. You don't need it for much more than that, other than, yes, you have decimal points here. So it shows you what you're going to end on. It'll show you single digits every single time. Well, sorry, it'll show you no significant figures every time just because it's clean and that will be the number you're using no matter what. It always rounds down as well. So if you have 79.9 for whatever reason, it'll be 79. It will not be 80. So nice and clean. But does it work for other spells too? Yeah, 14 because 1.4 times 10 is 14. But what about, celestial alignment, things like that? That modifies your astral power. And yeah, that works. Times 5, times 1.5. But what about with Blessing of the Ancients? Yep, it works with that too. But what happens if my debuff's about to expire? Oh, look, you don't get it to begin with. It will give you the correct number every single time. The prediction will not fail you. So, it works with buffs, it works with talents, it shows the bar, it looks clean. What else does it do? Well, we said Fury of Elune earlier, so let's do Fury of Elune. For testing purposes, I made my Fury of Elune Rejuvenation. You guessed it. I did that just because it's nice and easy to do. So, what can we do with that? Well, pretty simple. I apply Rejuve, and it's based on the amount of astral power you have. I use the buff as a trigger, just so you know, not the actual duration. It's all custom Lua. If you can read it, you can remake it. But here, check this out. So I'm at 0 right now. What happens if I go even more and more and more towards 100% astral power? Turns out, you can just use a simple formula to determine the duration of Fury of Elune, given you keep Rejuve active because that's your testing purpose. So as you can see, the duration, that's how much time in seconds you have until Fury of Elune will hit 0. Now, it doesn't work when you're adding more spells to it. For example, if I'm constantly casting Solar Wrath, it will only use the current astral power. It does not subtract amounts from how much am I generating per second. It only works when you do that. It only works like that if you have a standalone add-on because you need a way to track multiple dots, simply due to shooting stars. So it doesn't really work too well in the way that you would want it to work. So rather than mess around with all this code that won't work in the end, I just let it be at, here's your total amount of energy you have, and here's how long it's going to take at your current haste to actually hit 0. Now, why do I say at your current haste? Well, do we know that Fury of Elune is based on your haste as well? Not many people do, but yes, it does modify your haste. The duration does get modified by your haste. So I'm waiting for Berserk to come up, and then I can show you. Just as a frame of reference, we're going to see the maximum amount first, and you're going to be here. So 14.4 seconds. So if we have more haste, the duration should be lower when we bounce back up. So 14.4 is our limit, and we should be lower than 14.4 now. 12.5. There we go. So yeah, it scales with haste. It seems to be working almost exactly how it should be working, right? It's a miracle. So what else is there to show off? Well, there's a couple things. While I don't have the new moon, half moon, full moon spells implemented with its own tracker, I do have it emulated here. So I can actually put on Moonkin form and things like that, and then, well, because Moonkin form, Blessing of the Ancients, surprise, does not modify those, I should be only getting the face values, 10, 20, 40. Now, for testing purposes, Healing Touch also generates 15 energy. Why does it generate 15? Touch of the Stars. It's a PvP talent. So, I have that implemented too. I'm going to cast Healing Touch, see? 15. So, what do we have for full moon and things like that? Well, we have Teleport Moonglade. That's one of them. That's going to be New Moon, actually. So we should see 10 here. And we should see 10 without it. Without Fury of Elune. Good. So that's working. How about Half Moon? Should be 20, right? Yep. And Full Moon, which I have bound to Cyclone, should be 40. Yep. That's a big old prediction right there. So, how does this actually play out in game? Well, it just tells you your predictive astral power. So if you have, I'm just going to go right away. See? Big jump. That's the one you're going to finish on. And then everything else will catch up to it. Nice, right? It's everything you could possibly want. And all you have to do is import it. Yay. Well, I think that's it for now, other than, well, empowerments, which that happens. When you're above a certain amount of energy, 75, and you have 3 stacks of empowerment, which we do, it'll give you an overflow warning, meaning that you are, well, over a certain value. You have too much. You need to dump it. And Lunar Strike has the same thing. I have it set to 2 right now because you can only have 2 stacks in Warlords. So Lunar Strike also does that. But what happens when they're both up? You know, Lunar Strike and Solar. Lunar and Solar, both overflowing. Lunar Strike will take priority. Only because, well, it's probably gonna happen first anyway. So there you have it. Astral Power Pro Bar, APP-B, APP, AP Pro Bar, whatever. You make an acronym for it, I don't care. That's that. I really don't have anything else more to showcase, other than you can see my garrison in the background, sort of. I'm outside the wall, auto-attacking this thing like a Panzerkin. I need mana. Anyway, thank you for stopping by, and have a good night.